And oh, why is my screen sharing paused? Are we good? Everybody see the screen? All right. So we are recording, and all of the materials, the PowerPoint, the chat box feature, the recording of this webinar will be available on the website, and we'll send out links and information to that. Quickly, this is our agenda today. We are going to talk about some goals and common principles. We are going to talk about this summer. We are going to get into the fall and beyond. And then we will have some specific policy recommendations to discuss, and summary and next steps. Our goals today are to engage you, the youth development field, into this conversation about the recovery. We want to identify actionable ideas that can be implemented this summer and develop recommendations that youth development organizations can use to partner with schools during this recovery time, and discuss next steps for us working together as a field. So I'm going to hand it over to Violet to have this common principles discussion.
Okay, so thank you, Ellie. So one of the things that that has evolved through, we've, I think, done now 4 of these sessions, is these common principles that we really want to operate from. And so we think of this and we look at this as these are the overarching principles or values that we share, and that we want to use these to guide our recommendations and guide our discussion. And so I'm going to read through them, but if there's something that's missing, and so we would love to hear from you as we go on. There's many more of these visioning sessions that will happen, but we want to hear from you. So we want to recognize and we want to address racial and economic disparities. And we've looked at that and thinking like we really want to make that even stronger and talk more about addressing some of the racial justice issues that we are, we want to put it in that context. We want to focus on young people at the center of our work. That's what youth development is all about. It's really about all the young people that we work with, and that promise and the leadership that we bring and that resilience. I'm just using the words that people have said in the chat. We need, for the school community-based organizations, we need that partnership and collaboration. And we need to engage young people and families and have their voices in the planning and decision making. I think that is so critical. So I want to just reiterate that as we talk about the visioning session as we move forward. We really want to think about how that is a value to many of our organizations, to have families' voices and to have our youth voices lifted up, so that we aren't just talking about things that we think will be a solution, but that we know they will be a solution for our families. Looking at this from a safety first perspective, that's always key and important for both the youth and the youth development professionals. We want, in terms of guiding our discussion, we want to provide the breadth of experiences, including arts and not just academics. That's, again, what we bring. I like to think of it, and Ellie and I had a discussion, and I like to think of it as meaningful engagement that we bring to youth. And then the need to focus on social, emotional well-being and the mental health. We cannot say that enough. That is so critical. So those are some of the common principles and values that have been guiding these visioning discussions. And if there's anything, or if anyone would want to add, or if there's something that you really think is really missing that's critical, we are very open to hearing from you. So just chime in. So one of the things that I want to just also share is that as we go through this session, what's really critical is your input. That's why we're doing the visioning session. We are not here to just impart information, but really hear from you and get your insights and your ideas and your thoughts. And so we're going to move into the next area, and we're going to start pretty quickly. We're going to do a poll. So get ready. Ellie's going to bring that poll up, and it's just kind of going to help us to gauge what's happening right now with our with youth development organizations. So we'd like for you to take an opportunity to engage in this poll, and then we'll have a discussion. You'll see the results in real time, so that's the great part. So if you are a program provider, what are your plans for this summer? We're just focusing right now on this summer. Can't do anything this summer, virtual only, virtual and adapted in person, kind of like a hybrid, or adapted in person only, or I'm not a program provider, or other. So we'd like for you to right now start by taking the poll in terms of what kinds of plans you have for this summer.
Oh no, I ruined it for us. All right, hold on a second. We're gonna do this. See, you try to get all fancy.
I was just gonna say it maybe
Oh, now I just cut Dina off by changing. Oh, we can just do it. I guess you know what? We can do it as a chat, and folks can.
That will work. So no, it's starting. You can start now.
Oh, I've been sending people back to being attendees.
Okay.
And then I can make them panelists again.
Okay. So what we're doing is she's turning you into attendees. You'll do the poll, and then we'll turn you back into panelists. So if you could do that, that would be great. It's really, this is really interesting to see what people will be doing. So.
Looks like we've just got a couple of people. I know there's one person who's on the phone who may not be able to vote.
So it looks like we have at least 10 responses.
Yep.
So that's really good.
So this result is a little different than the other sessions we've held. Up to now, it's been about 50-50 for virtual and in-person adapted. It looks like we have a slightly different, and then we have 4 folks who say they can't do anything this summer. So I don't know if somebody would be willing to, Andy, I'm gonna close the poll. Could you help me move people back over as panelists so we can make it easy to have these discussions?
Good thing.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if folks would, if somebody would feel comfortable giving us a little bit of insight as to why you feel like you can't do anything this summer. Everybody's being moved back over.
Mm-hmm. So what we would want you to do is just take yourself off mute, and then, just share. This was a very good way to kind of gauge what is happening and what people are doing. So really, what about we're going to start out with the group who feels like they can't do anything this summer. Is anybody willing to share with that, or what's happening and as a result?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We are a school age program, so and we have not had summer programs for a long time. So we have no idea what's happening with the schools in the fall, but I don't think we can be there at all in the summer.
Got it. So you don't usually run summer programming, is
Right,
what you're saying.
exactly.
Got it.
Okay. That makes a big difference. Anyone else that answered that question want to share? Just so you know, when you are sharing this information. We are just kind of looking at this and putting, it's giving us an overarching idea of where we should be focusing our time and our energy around recommendations or what's kind of guiding the youth development. So any insights that you can provide is absolutely important and critical right now. So we would love to be able to hear from anyone else who may have identified that they can't do programs this summer. Okay. All right. So what we'd like to do then is just go ahead and focus on the summer. And we're going to think about this from the summer, and then we're going to do a set of questions that will be the fall. So, but for right now, what we really like to do is just focus in on summer. And here, what we'd like to do is hear from you. What are you currently thinking about for your summer programs this summer? Are there any innovations or adaptations you would like to implement? And if so, what are the resources that it would take? Are you partnering with school districts or schools to make that happen? And if so, so someone I think is on a phone. If you could mute yourself on the phone, unless you're trying to share with us, that would be helpful. Thank you. And then how best can we partner with each other? So this is a lot of questions, but I just want to kind of lay the groundwork in terms of where we're going. What are some of the ways that you're engaging students and families, and how can we include their voices? And then what are some of the ways that you're addressing inequities in terms of access? This is like a really critical one, thinking about it from the standpoint of food and technology and supports. What else could we be doing, and what resources do we need? And so this is where we want to right now really start talking about and focusing our time and our attention on the summer piece. So.
And Vanessa in the chat box says, thinking about the concerns coming out of a variety of sectors around the impact of the shelter-in-place restrictions on physical and mental health, looking for a trauma-informed response to the COVID pandemic and what kids and youth may have experienced during the last few months.
That is so important. I've been in a number of discussions where people have been talking about the shelter-in-place restrictions and what it has meant from a physical and mental health perspective. So thank you, Vanessa. So could you just start sharing, unmute yourself, and we'd like to hear from you. In order for this to be rich, we really need to hear from you in terms of what you're doing or what you're thinking and what your challenges. This is not about having a solution. What are the challenges? What do we need to be thinking about? What is it that we're going to need in terms of supports to really make the programs what we want them to be for our youth? So I'm going to stop talking for a minute and see if there's someone else who would like to really talk from their perspective.
Dana, can I call on you to maybe talk about what you guys are doing this summer?
Absolutely. So we have a couple of different, I guess, program options and models that we're implementing this summer. I was actually getting ready to, volunteer to speak because I think right now at this moment, we're at an interesting place because a week ago or whenever it was, even this week, there have been more restrictions that are lifted. And so we had fully, come up with a plan for virtual only. And now, some of our partners are kind of, dipping their toes in the water or wanting to and saying, well, what about outside? Will we be able to do, small groups in outside, or, is it possible to have programming taking place inside, but with a small group? And so I think, it's tough because, of course we want to give, the best, the most dynamic program. But again, we were fully planning, and I think just with safety, really being at the forefront of it all, and just us really not being sure exactly all of the parameters that are going to be in place. wanting to make sure that we're in compliance, with all of
Right.
the health and safety guidelines. We were just fully planning to do virtual only. And so now we're kind of having to go back and revisit what that's going to look like with some partners. We have one partnership with the Maryland Center for the Arts where we're doing some workshops. And so now they have, space outside, like a field or what have you. And so now they are entertaining the idea of being outside. I mean, I'll say as a parent, as a parent first, I'm just nervous about all of it.
Right.
It just makes me really nervous. So, those are some of the things that I think about. And I also think, and that was kind of what I was going to mention as well, is that I think we could come up with, great models for either virtual or now sort of an adapted approach. But I also think just in terms of the circles that I'm talking to of individuals who are parents, there is also a lot of hesitancy for both models, the adapted because
Exactly.
of, the safety. And I'm not sure I'm ready for, to have my children around other children, not knowing, where they've been, what they've been exposed to. But even in the virtual space too, it's like, well, my child has been online for the last 3 months and cooped up inside the house. And so I don't want them to be online. And
Right.
so, if you have a sort of program model where, it's an option and parents can opt out and kids don't have to be there. That's definitely one of the challenges, that we're talking about. Is like, we can have this great program and they're only online for an hour, whatever it is, we can pull out all the bells and whistles, but at the end of the day, if the parents are kind of not buying in, then we still, have to deal with that challenge.
Yeah, I think that you touched on so many points of where we're at right now. It's really the uncertainty around the fact that there is a lot of fear out there with parents from the perspective of the environment that their child is going in, even if they're going to be outside. Because really, the reality is, even if you're outside, you're still in contact, even with the social distancing. I mean, you can't, you have to go to the bathroom at some point. You have to wash your hands. There's still that level of contact. So I think you, Dana, hit on a lot of the factors around some of the challenges. And then I, just adding to that, just thinking about from when you were saying about the safety protocols and how much sanitization can you do, and are you sure you've done enough? And I know what the CDC says, but the minute someone walks into an environment, it's no longer sanitized. That's just the reality. So these are all the kinds of challenges. So I'm talking now. I'd like to hear from someone else in terms of what your summers are evolving into and what you're thinking.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can, Shonda.
Hi, this
Thank
is
you.
Shonda White from Project STEAM Maryland. We are a child care as well as before and after school enrichment, and we run summer camps. This summer, we are condensing our summer camp. We usually serve about 50 to 60 kids, and then I have about 20 to 25 middle school to high school and college volunteers. But of course, this summer, we're unable to do that. Start with the sanitation. As far as the sanitation, our guidelines for this summer will be, temperature checks. And we've been doing all this thus far because we've been operating as an essential personnel site. And we, once again, service school-age children. So we have the temperature checks in place. Kids come in and wash their hands to and from. We're doing small group sessions, small group in regards to 15. We also are, for the first time ever, doing virtual learning, virtual camp where we'll have the hour sessions. We will also be sending or have parents have the options to do or to order kits from us because we are science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, and we focus on all of that. So we're also putting together at-home kits for those who don't want to do the virtual weekly camps so they can work with their parents and engage in a family center or a family atmosphere at home. On site, we are operating 2 different classrooms with, once again, 15 kids, which is a 1 to 15 ratio. The children will be separated at no time will either group cross paths. We have a location big enough to where we can ensure that happens. The multiple frequent cleaning we've condensed the schedule to be able to do that within the daily schedule. So our parents feel safe. We are, as far as the materials individualized for kids, that's something different this year, which is taking a little more time to do. We usually have all the kids, of course, work together and be more active and interact together. This year, we have to take a different approach, of course, due to COVID. So each camper per se will have their own bin and own materials throughout the time of our program. So that's some of the things we're doing to try to ensure that our kids don't lose that summer learning loss and they're actively engaged. We also include that social and emotional learning piece within our program as well. And now we're trying to figure out how to do that at home so those kids will get the same quality instruction that we're doing on site as well as virtual. So those are some of the things that we're putting in place to do this summer. And unfortunately, we would love to have partners. We have no partners at this time. So we're doing this all on our own, which has been a little bit stressful, actually a lot stressful, because we usually have a little more partners and a little more help. So that's what we're doing here at Project STEAM Maryland.
Wow.
So that's a lot. You've knocked it out the ballpark. Thank you.
You really laid that out.
It's been some work and still work in progress, but we're trying. We don't want any kids to lose that interest in learning, because the virtual learning, as far as what we're gathering from input from around our way, which we're in the Owens Mills area, the kids are not having as much fun and there's not as energetic about the virtual learning at school. So we're trying to take that and take that information and turn it into, not to say positive, not that the school is negative, but to bring back that excitement and learning, because we don't know what the fall is going to look like.
Right. So it's interesting. One of the things that we've been doing, we canceled our summer overnight camp because we have not really been able to navigate that fully. And so we're not doing our regular summer day camps, but we are doing the virtual hybrid. We've been doing virtual programs since March 13th and offering a lot of virtual programs. But this summer we are doing a model. We're going to do the hybrid model where some of the programs they'll do online, and then they will all come together. And so we're monitoring the size groups that they'll be in, really thinking through the kits, almost kind of like what Shonda just said, really kits that only they have. There will be nothing shared. And in terms of transportation, parents will have the responsibility for getting the children to the location that the in-person session is taking place, which that provides a different challenge because if you don't have that transportation, then that's problematic. So we're using multiple sites to be able to do these types of programs. So I think that what you described as your virtual model, Shonda, and doing some in-person is it is a testing ground for us, and it's going to be a bigger testing ground to see as we go into the fall.
Shonda, what kind of partners would you like to have? There might be some folks on this call who might be good options, or there might be people we can connect you with.
The type of partnership I would like to have would be someone who could get us bulk materials as far as supplies. Right now, my option is seeing our numbers and shopping Amazon or the local stores. Different partnerships as far as the arts, STEM, different guest speakers. I usually have a panel of guest speakers that come in to talk about different careers in STEM. Those that usually come in are usually here, so now and older. So my challenge is now with them is teaching them how to do the Zooms and the technology portion, which has been interesting, but it's working. But I would like to have more speakers, once again, in the STEM related fields, because we also introduce and engage kids and connect that STEM to real life application for them. So those were some of the partners I would like to have. And of course, funding. Funding is always a great thing.
We're going to talk about funding. Yes, indeed. So that's good. Anyone else like to share in terms of things that they're doing this summer, virtual, hybrids? Love to hear from everyone.
I think we have somebody from the Y. Kristan?
Hello, this is Kristen. I'm from the Y. I work at Riverview Elementary School as the OST provider there.
Okay.
We are currently, we are planning for virtual programs for the 21st century sites, but doing when necessary or if able to do some in-person activities, such as like having Y on the fly coming to our schools outside and doing kind of fitness and nutrition activities that are more safe to do outside, but also socially distant. So we are more of a hybrid, less hybrid, but as only if applicable and to our individual sites.
Why on the fly? I love that term.
I know, that's very, very cool. So Kristen, can you talk about how did you get your students? Are these students that you've been working with all year? How did you make that connection? Do you have a special partnering with the school?
Yes, so we are embedded in the school. So my office is in the instrumental music classroom. And so we've been having an after school program with these students for the last few years. So we are going to be recruiting for our summer program. We recruit from the students who are not going to their ESY, their summer school program. So we already know those students. We have built relationships. They know who I am. They know who our enrichment specialists and our school day teachers are the teachers in our after school program and the teachers in our summer program. So they're referred to us by this school, or they know who we are and they want to join us because we do fun activities, sneak in learning in the meantime.
Okay, so it's not necessarily that you're going directly to the student, like you don't have all their contact information, or maybe you do.
So we do.
Been working with them.
Yes, so with being embedded in the school, we do have access. I know my principal has shared with me the updated contact list so that I can reach out to those students. They have given me a list of students that they are recruiting for their summer program, for the summer school. And then I have access to the rest of the students since it's mandatory for them to do the summer school program.
Okay.
Sounds like you have a great partnership with that school.
Yes, we definitely do. It's been a relationship in the making. The Y has been at Riverview for a few years, but they had a turnover with their administration and at the school, and I'm also new, so we were able to build a new program together.
Thank you, Kristen. That's Chris. I'm sorry.
Kristen, it's okay.
Kristen. The words all together, I was messing up there. Is there anyone who's engaging families? Are you doing any maybe family type programming versus just an individual child program? I'm just curious to know if anyone is engaging in that way.
This is Dana speaking again. We've done a lot of, just over the last few months, family and parent engagement. And I think, again, it even goes back to my point to try to get more parents involved and, sort of that buy-in to then want their students to be able to participate. But we've done... We had a family breakfast maybe a month or so ago where families, a virtual breakfast obviously, but families got on. We did a yoga workshop and we did sort of a sip and paint with the families, and it was actually sort of a parent and child paint along or paint together with one of our teaching artists. And so we've worked with a few schools to do similar sort of workshops with parents around trauma informed. I think somebody put in the chat, and of course we all are aware of what this situation and these circumstances, have done to sort of all of our psyches. But we did a workshop for parents specifically about trauma-informed practices and, how they can incorporate some of those strategies in their households. And for the summer, we have a few workshops that are planned specifically for parents that, of course, are inclusive of arts practices and techniques. And some of them are just, again, just to sort of wind down and be able to talk as adults and as parents about some of the things that they're challenged with. And what they're going through, but again, using painting, while we're having sort of this conversation to express and to get some of that out and to use it as an outlet.
Excellent. That's an excellent idea and a great way to engage families. Great. Thank you, Dana. That's really, really good stuff. What about ways, or in terms of, this is a hard question maybe, but what are some of the ways you may be addressing inequities or access, food, technologies, supports? I know one of the things that we're looking at doing is serving as a food site. We've been a food site for the last 4 years when we were running our summer camp. So we're going to continue to do that. And I'm just, curious as to other things that people might be doing to really address that and the inequities. A lot of our programming is virtual, so I'm just curious to know how people are navigating the virtual divide. It's a real thing. It's out there. And so I'd love to hear from you. Talk a little bit about that if you've been able to do that. Anyone? Okay.
I can speak to that. We have struggled with the devices. I know the county was mailing devices and it was going in order of high school, then middle school, then 3rd through 5th, and then K through 2nd. And for the after school program, it has been a struggle because of access to the building. We had very limited access to the building we have laptops that we purchased for our after school program. So it wasn't until earlier this week when we were allowed back in the building to clean up our rooms that we have the devices. So I'm currently staying with my parents, and they're filled with all of my office essentially, and the devices. So before our summer program starts, I'll be making sure they all work. So we did have a few sent out where there were some challenges not being able to log on to Google Meets or Google Classrooms. So now we are working on getting that all situated before we hand out the devices. But it has been a struggle for sure.
So in Washington County, when we did our Western Maryland discussion, they were saying that the Washington County schools were taking back all the kids' devices at the end of the school year. I don't know what the plan is in Baltimore County. Do you know how Baltimore County schools are approaching that?
I do not know at this moment. I have not heard anything. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Ellie, I can tell you anecdotally as a parent with kids in Baltimore County schools that they were told to keep their devices if they were returning to school next year.
Great.
Good morning, everyone. This is Vernell Mitchell-Hawkins. I'm with Baltimore County 4-H.
Hi, Vernell.
Hi, Vernell.
Hi, it's been a great discussion. I just wanted to share a little bit in terms of 4-H. I was going to say, as a county, I think Baltimore County is probably in a better position on a resource and than some of the other counties in Maryland in terms of being able to get devices out to youth. So, being an OST provider, that kind of trickles down to being a benefit for us in that, especially since Vanessa had shared the youth could continue to hold on to their devices over the summer. So I think with 4-H, in terms of addressing inequities, this has really given us an opportunity to really, dig deep and look into those partnerships and really be able to, for lack of a better term, push out or shop out programs in areas where, transportation may have been a concern, or just access to resources to be able to provide may have been a concern or a challenge. So we're able to, send out, there's a virtual camp. So hopefully Shanira will want to share a little bit more about it. So the statewide virtual summer camp program, we're able to put that out to youth because it is a link, all over the place. Whereas if we were having a physical camp, we're limited only by, the number of staff we can have and how many parents can bring their children to that location. So I kind of feel like even though this is a challenge, it kind of gives us a chance to get creative and be able to really reach some of those or overcome some of the barriers that we have had.
For now, I have heard that many program providers are expanding who they are working with because of that lack of limitation of physical space, and that is a theme that has that I have heard across these conversations and other conversations we're having.
So I just have one question. This is a question for you, Vernell. I'm sure this is inherent in what you just said, but I want to make sure I understand. So the devices that students were distributed in Baltimore County, are they software limited, or do they can they use those devices to access other programs, like our youth development programs, if they have a link for a virtual program, that kind of thing? I'm just curious in terms of what their protocols have been.
It's a Chromebook. So, they won't be able to download anything, but they can access things virtually. Okay. And some locations, I know that if there was a challenge, that there were even programs put in place that can help families get like hotspots, and so that way the wireless internet wasn't, to kind of overcome that barrier as well. And again, I feel like we're just kind of like benefactors of that trickle down initiative of the school to be able to have that.
Okay, that's important to know, because it, as we think about strategy in the youth development world, that's one of our areas that it's been this digital divide piece. So we're going to move on, and thank you so much, Vernell and Kristen, for sharing. We're going to talk a little bit now about the fall and beyond. And so it's similar questions, but what are you currently thinking about for your programs for this fall? Thinking about a similar model, what are some of the innovations and adaptations that you need to make? How are you partnering with schools and school districts? And this is a really important question that we want to spend some time on, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But also, how else can we best partner with each other? I think, Vernell, when you were talking a minute ago about this being a time when we can take a different look and approach, maybe that's where our focus and energy one of the focuses and energy should be, in how we as a youth development group really think innovatively and strategically about how we partner and how we want to partner with schools. What are some of the ways that we can, again, engage families, and what are some of the ways that we could address inequities? So similar to what we just talked about from a summer perspective, what about the fall? The fall is a little further out, and from what we know and what we hear, the situation with the social distancing does not seem like it's going to be gone by the end of the summer by any stretch of the imagination. So I would imagine that, some level of hybrid programming is still warranted or needed. But one of the things that I know we have already, and I'm talking about the Girl Scouts, because we are really dependent on a lot of our programs, and our troops meet in schools. And we've already been told that there is going to be limited access to the schools for outside groups. So limited or no access. And so I'm just curious as to what your thinking is around fall programming. And, you know, when it starts to get cold, it's not as easy just to find outside locations. So there's another little piece that gets thrown in here. And are you thinking all virtual, or how can we think about this from a strategy standpoint? So I'd love to hear what people are thinking, and some ideas that may be out there.
And one other thing I'd like to throw in the mix is how you're thinking about training and professional development for your staff during this time. So all comers on this. I know we have a couple of school-based childcare programs on this call. And I don't know if you want to jump in and say what you're thinking at this point, or even the questions you have that you need to have answered before you can even get to that place.
I know with the Y, our CEO put out a statement yesterday to all the associates, is saying that we are going to be following whatever the county and the schools that we're in says that whether we can do. So I will say it is more anxiety inducing, and there's going to be multiple different versions of plans of how to do an after school program, whether if we are in house or if we are going to be asked not to attend. So I think it's just a matter of planning for all the options and then the wait and see game.
Thank you. Maxine or Leslie or Michelle?
I'm here.
Maxine is there.
Wait for, they can join in also. We are very actually anxious because we have no clue as to what can happen, if we can be any place. No one has told us anything. And I know they don't know a lot, but it's, I think, very difficult for us to discuss anything with our staff or with our parents, getting information now or calls now about re-registration. And I feel a little foolish to say, I have no idea. So I told all of the people, we'll get back to them.
And are your principals just saying that they don't know either, and so they can't share with you, or are they just kind of radio silent?
I don't know. That was Leslie's job to call, but I think they're not giving any information.
Yeah, they don't know. They don't have information to give us. So I would say radio silent is exactly what they are
Right.
doing.
So it's interesting because as I was sharing this I think it was I don't want to make, it was one of the county school systems that put some notification out that said that they would not be allowing outside groups into their schools this in the fall. And so the call started and I had a discussion. And one of the things that came to me was that there was, this was a business person, has a office, really great location. And what she said was, you know, she hadn't thought about it from this perspective, but maybe with some people having more telework staff and having vacant buildings, maybe there's a way to really think about how we utilize the business spaces a little bit differently than what we maybe we haven't even really utilized them because we've been so dependent on schools. And so it gave me a moment of pause to really start thinking about that. I mean, technically for us, we've used a lot of churches in the past, and community centers and schools and things like that. But I don't know that we've really utilized business spaces. And I'm not saying every business out there would be welcoming like this, but from her perspective, when she heard that the schools were not going to be open, she's like, that means I need to rethink my own space and what I can give. So I'm thinking, like, from a youth development standpoint, one of the initiatives that we might, it's not even an initiative, but a thought that I was thinking about is if we could come up with some turnkey ways, and I say turnkey, although I know it's hard, that we could show the schools how we can be of a support. We can come in, really addressing all of the issues and the scary pieces that people are dealing with. It goes back to that how are we going to social distance? How are we going to sanitize? How do we, because schools are grappling with all of those kinds of things. And then looking at ways that we could do the same thing with businesses or people who we have not always utilized their space, because once it gets cold, it's really hard to have kids outside in programming. So I'm just curious if that would be, if there are people on the call who already have kind of relationships in business communities, and do they utilize those kinds of spaces, and does that make sense? It's just, for me, a matter of really thinking differently about space and about in-person programming.
We do have licensing regulations, so that is not an issue, it's a reality, and I guess it's something that would have to be approached and discussed and figured out.
Yep.
Absolutely. I know, one of the things that we discussed yesterday in the Baltimore conversation was a couple of things. One was different ways to bring to schools some confidence that if you were in the building, that you can mitigate risk to the extent possible. And then also, if it's just not possible, if the policy is no interaction physically at school buildings, how else organizations and programs can partner with schools, so how we can serve in other roles. And I'm wondering if some people have put some thoughts into that, how we bring that value in either scenario.
I was actually going to see if I could jump in to the training question that Ellie asked earlier, and talk a little bit about that, and then potentially it may intersect a little bit with value add. So I don't know everyone on the call. So our organization, No More Stolen Childhoods, focuses exclusively on childhood sexual abuse. And so we address both the prevention side, but also intervention efforts for adults who did not disclose their abuse as children. And we had to pivot, as everybody else did this season, to move a lot of things to online trainings and webinar-based trainings, as opposed to in-person, which we typically would do. But in doing so, made a lot of our programming available at no charge. And so I just want to throw that out there as an option to folks. So, we are trained facilitators in Darkness to Light Stewards of Children training, which is an accredited program across the country that meets the requirements in the state for child sexual abuse prevention. But it's really an incredible model because it's good for parents as well as for staff. And so it's the idea of, do you know the signs, and are you able to respond appropriately when you see something? So it sort of goes a little bit beyond just sort of be a mandated reporter, and talks a little bit about relationship building and boundary setting. And so in Baltimore County, we partner with GBMC and their SAFE program to deliver that training. And so we are offering it now both virtually as well as some groups who are doing outdoor activities have asked for it in person. And we've been able to adapt and accommodate with group size and social distancing to make that happen. So I just want to make people aware that that's available. But more importantly, almost, we've seen a real interest in training around online safety for parents. This idea of all of our kids are learning online, entertainment online, socializing online. We all are, adults as well. And we've seen huge spikes in online sexual abuse and the trafficking of child pornography. And so trying to just really inform parents that there are things you can do to protect your kids at home. There are, things that you can put in place, low cost or no cost, to be able to keep your kids safe. And so we've got 2 webinars. They're available free. You can go to our website and share them. One is for younger kids, so preschool through school age, and one is for tweens and teens. And then we've also got a couple of groups who are working with CASA. They wanted one that was tweaked specifically to their volunteers. So if there are partners in Baltimore County that want it, tweaked specifically to their age group, or if you're a gender specific program or you're a, depending on what your needs are, we're happy to do them live. And again, it's at no cost, and we bring on all the experts and do all the setup, and people just log in and view. So I just wanted to share that as a resource. I'm not trying to take you off track from the discussion, but
no, that's really important, because I think that it's absolutely critical that we figure out ways that we all can partner and what we bring to the table and how that gets packaged. So I really appreciate your sharing that and talking about and bringing that forward. I didn't want to cut you off, but go ahead, Vanessa.
No. Just it's the numbers are pretty staggering. So there's lots of concerns about the ongoing keeping kids inside and keeping kids on devices. There's lots of risks, and I totally get it. I'm a parent. We all are doing it, but the more we organizationally can do to just help folks navigate that, we're happy to do that. So thank you for allowing me the time to share it.
And Vanessa, will you drop your the links that you want to share into the chat box as well? Thank you.
I think that what Vanessa just brought up brings up a couple different points in terms of, again, I'm going to go back to how we best partner, and then how we take our partnerships and how we talk to the schools about the values that we bring, and from a standpoint like this, because I do think that Vanessa talked about the sexual abuse that is happening online, and it may not be top of mind for a lot of people that they may feel actually that their children are more protected, and here you hear what's happening, and that's not necessarily the case. I also think that there is a certain amount of virtual burnout. Someone was sharing with me that their children are literally on virtual overload. Between school and everybody turning their programs virtual. And we had some girls who gave us feedback. They just feel like it's constant. They're bombarded with that. So if I think, again, figuring out how we partner as organizations, how we kind of mitigate, how we educate parents, and excuse me, and educate our staff on things that we really may need to be doing and incorporating in our virtual programs from a mental health standpoint. I think there are things that we can be done. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, Vanessa. Is there anyone else who wants to share? If not, we're going to move to our next section here. We wanted to just, I don't know how many of you have had an opportunity to look at the MSDE recovery plan. It can be very, very scary. We have just a few points here that we want to bring out, but I shouldn't say it should be scary. It's really, based in safety, but it does have a huge impact on us. So we want to take a minute, talk about the recovery plan, and talk about some of the really important pieces here. Ellie, you were just going to say something, so go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of notes. One is that there is a 2.0 version of the MSD recovery plan that is in our Dropbox. It is actually a different version than the version sitting on the state's website right now. They are accepting comments, and I'm going to put in the chat box an email address that if you want to send comments to MSDE about the plan, and we encourage you to do so, that's where you would send them. We would also love to see those comments as well and collect them. So it would help guide some of the recommendations we might make. Also, these are the recovery plans for schools. There are separate guidelines for childcare, which are also in that folder. There's also some cool things from other countries. So anyway, definitely take that look at that folder. And I would love to hear if people have read either the 1.0 version or 2.0 version of the recovery plan, and any thoughts they have besides the things that we've pulled out as being things to discuss too.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really important, Ellie, you want to go back? That's really important here is that the creation of a recovery plan stakeholder group. I think every school district has to do that. And they're talking about a diverse group of stakeholders, including parents, teachers, students, educators, and community members to encompass each system's unique student population and needs. And I think this is a place where, we need to, as a youth development organizations, really be paying attention to what these stakeholder groups are, when they're meeting, who's on them, how do you become part of it? Because this is a way to be really part of the conversation. And the stakeholders that we're talking about here are absolutely the stakeholders that affect each of our programs. I think that this plan, what we want to, so part of the discussion of the school districts, many decisions are left to the discretion of the school districts. And so one of the discretions that are left to the school district is access to students. And again, for some of our programs, if we're not embedded in the schools, access to students, either it could paralyze our program. I think we heard that earlier. And in terms of knowing what is our next steps. So how we meet state and college and career readiness standards are also many decisions that are left to the school districts. And just looking at things like providing transportation, I don't know how many of you have looked at this recommendation, but that's in the plan, but for a 77 passenger bus, it would allow for approximately 13 students. Now, depending on the size of your program, that's a lot of buses. So just really understanding that there is, there's a lot to be considered when we talk about transportation. We were already transportation challenged before COVID, quite frankly, in some programs in some areas. And now with this, it adds another dimension of things that we really have to think about. And interestingly enough, the plan does not cover public transportation, which many of the students use public transportation to get to school, particularly in Baltimore City. I'm not sure if Baltimore County is the same, but in Baltimore City, for instance, many of the students are using public transportation. Some of the other areas, and if we can go to the next slide, and then they're also just letting school districts decide on their alternative schedule designs in terms of the limit of the number of students in buildings. So they're talking about 1-day rotations or 2-day rotations or AB weeks. I don't know if there's the 4-day on, 1 day off or something like that, but there are quite a few models that are out there, and it might behoove us again, as we think about our programs, to think about turnkey models that fit these different models so that we're ready to go into a situation where we can say to a school, we've already thought this through for you, and here's how our program fits a 1-day model or a 2-day rotation or AB, rather than waiting for the schools to kind of think through how do they bring us in and fit into the model. I think also mentioning continuing to provide Maryland out of school programs. The plan talks about this, but it doesn't really provide for any details. So there's still things that really have to be addressed in this plan. And other things that it doesn't address is how partners will be allowed to use buildings, and can students use school technology and partner programs, which is one of the reasons I brought that up earlier when Vernell and Kristen was talking, like can partners use already equipment that schools have already disseminated. So what's really key, Ellie just brought this up, is that this plan is still being revised. It's still being changed. That's why we have 1.0, 2.0. I was reading yesterday where there's been a request by some of the daycare centers to move from childcare, not daycare, but childcare, to move from 15 students to 20 students. my point here is that the requests are going in, so it's very important for us to kind of take a minute and think about how this affects us and what is it that you would like coming out of this visioning session. Are there things that you think need to be considered that we would like to throw out? And like we said, everyone is, and we encourage everyone to make their own individual comments, but we'd love to hear from you today what kinds of things we really need to be thinking about and talking about that impact our program, particularly from the recovery plan standpoint.
Yeah, so what kinds of things would you like to see in there? One of the conversations we had yesterday is if you were to go talk to your school partner today, what would you tell them that you could bring, and what would you want them to tell
provide.
you to provide? Yeah. And please just bring yourself off mute, or you know, the chat box is always open. Oh, come on, guys. I'm going to call on people. I will call on you. We haven't heard, I'm going to call on somebody. Oh, I see something in the chat box. Suzanne, we haven't heard from you yet today. Thought maybe I see what you're
thinking. That's a great question. Oh, go ahead, Dana. Dana just had a great question, and we're going to come back to that because there was a discussion that Ellie and I had. So Ellie, you were asking.
Oh, I was going to call on somebody, but to answer Dana's questions, at the state level, this is a fascinating thing, actually. Most of the plan, the first version of the plan, was written internally, and then they brought together their ESSA stakeholder group to review the plan. They gave them 24 hours to read it. They brought them together for a couple of hours to discuss, and then published it without making any changes and put the ESSA stakeholder group on that list of people who had seen it. So a few people were a little bent out of shape about that. So I think the second time around, they brought the ESSA stakeholder group back together. They are making more significant changes, and then they have started to solicit this public comment. So that's at the state level. At the local level, I think it's going to look very different from county to county how these recovery stakeholder groups are formed. I think it's going to be our job to kind of whittle our way into those groups however we can. I know, for instance, that Baltimore City is planning to do a series of public or probably virtual events to engage parents, students, partners, etc. In their planning, which I'm very happy to hear that is happening. And then, like I said, I'm not sure. I don't know if anybody on the line may have some perspective about what Baltimore County might plan to do around that.
Vernell?
Yeah, I just took myself off mute. I don't have any inside track onto what's going on in the huge machine that is BCPS. But I will say, I think that on our side, or as far as OST providers, it might be to our benefit to start thinking about, just as you said earlier, like what can we do to complement what they need? Because even the work that we're doing currently with some of our schools, although they know our work is important, they know that the services we provide with the STEM support and all the other things, they know it's important, but right now, that's not their largest fish to fry.
It's not.
Right.
Yeah.
So as the provider, we have to figure out, what we need to fry our own fish and give it to them already on the plate, so they don't think about it. They can just say, okay, yeah, we'll do that. So I think it's definitely, a good way to go. And that's one thing I wanted to say. And the other thing I wanted to say is there a way to really mobilize out of school time providers to really say, kind of like I have, who has, like, for example, Shonda was speaking and she was saying they would like to have STEM support But then, so maybe, you know, which is something 4-H does unapologetically, we're great. But there might be another organization that, hey, I've got this empty space, but then there's a Y looking for a space. You know, like, it's kind of like, is there a way that we can kind of match these things together so that as an OST group, we can already be working together and kind of filling each other's gaps. So when the time is ready, we've already fried the fish. Okay, so you said we can't come in. Well, we've already figured that part out. You don't have to figure,
Right.
you know, already done.
We already have the partnerships
Right.
figured out.
Figure it out.
So a
Exactly.
big I need.
Yes.
Yes.
It was a game we used to play. I have, who has.
Right. And I think along those lines, even having thought through, again, some of these rotations and how our programs fit in. And I think we also need to adapt our language. We are, now this is my bias, but we are so much more than enrichment programs for students.
Mm-hmm.
I look at this from the perspective of we can absolutely support the schools. And I go back again to Ellie saying, the schools can't do this by themselves. They shouldn't have to do it by themselves. And we are here. And so how do we plug the holes that they are experiencing? So I think almost to our advantage, if we could figure out what are some, and from one district to the next, what are some of the key issues that they're grappling with? And we figure out how we as youth development agencies can plug some of those holes. That's the turnkey piece that we get to put forward, saying, you don't have to figure this out. We've already figured it out for you. And I know that's very pie in the sky. is that we have to do some of that. We cannot wait for someone to figure out how we can come in. We've got to be kind of in control of our own destiny to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the more we can do some of the turnkey thinking, and so this, I see this visioning session as a great beginning to kind of get out what is some of the issues, but then maybe, you know, something else that evolves out of this is what is the next generation thinking around how we can move this along and bringing us all along together. There definitely going to be the situation where there's going to be agencies and organizations that are ahead of each other. But if we all go at this from the perspective of everyone for themselves, it's going to be very hard for the schools to wrap their heads around this, and they won't want to. And that's how I look at it. They won't want to have to deal with this because they have so many other things that they're dealing with right now. But if we can figure out collectively ways that we can make this work, it might be to our advantage. That's not to say that we're not going to make a request. There may be some requests that we have to make, but I just put that out there because I think that we have to do that kind of thinking as well. So moving along, I think, you know, talking about specific funding and policy recommendations, I think these are the last three questions that we really want to kind of, are these our last three, Ellie? Our last three?
Yep.
What do we need to be asking for? Who should be asking? Who should we be asking? Who should we be asking? And what action steps should we take? And this is really around, again, the specific funding and policy recommendations as we move forward. So love to hear from you on that. I have, but I don't want to start. I want to hear from others.
I will mention that yesterday in the Baltimore conversation, we came to a conclusion that we wanted to create and craft a shared statement about the value of our partnership as youth development and out-of-school time providers. So there is a Google Doc. There's not much in it yet. I begged for partners on writing it because what will happen if I don't have partners is that I will wake up at 3 in the morning one night, and I'll just have to sit down and, bang it out. And also I want all the voices of the diverse, wonderful universe of our youth development field that we have included in this document. But yes, so I dropped the bit.ly to the document in the chat. So if you want to join in and help me not have to wake up at 3 in the morning and craft it, I invite you all to help us shape this value statement that we can share at the state level and at the local level.
Great. Ellie, will you, so you put it in the chat, will we be
Yep.
able to get that after?
Yes, I will also send it in the follow-up email.
Okay, all right. Anything else people are thinking? I think Renelle also, she said her suggestion is to make the ask and request in language that schools use. We tend to use different acronyms. We do love our acronyms in terms that are unfamiliar to educators, in which case they may not get the full breadth of what we are sharing. I think that's absolutely spot on.
This is Dana. I'm just looking at this first question of what do we need to be asking for? And I think part of the conversation that we've had as well, and it, like you just said, it's so tough because so many people who are, making the decisions, and principals and directors and, people in leadership, they really just don't know. And so it's tough for us to make the decisions, but at the same time, we can't just sit, we have to begin thinking of, what we're going to do. And like someone else said, come up with plan A, B, C, and D. I think though, when I look at that first question, what I'm really thinking about, I won't say instead of what do we need to be asking for, but we're really asking what the need is, and really trying to speak to our partners about what we can do to support. What do you need? What do you just in this time again of so many unknowns and transitions and changes, we may have to pivot some of what we're thinking in sort of our traditional modalities and programming things to really try to get in there to be supportive to what it is that they need. So I think, just being a part of the conversations, if we can be,
Right.
that's part of the who should we be talking to, but trying to be a part of those conversations with those people who ultimately will make the decisions in the next 4 to 6 weeks, hopefully, as it pertains to the fall. That's kind of what I'm thinking is how to adapt to really fit what it is that they need, whether it's virtual or adaptive, or we don't need, the arts, we're focusing on whatever it is, and just try to say, okay, we can do that. I mean, that's just our answer. Yes, we can do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree 100%. When I was talking about finding out what, where are they struggling, and then plugging in, filling those holes. That's what we can do. We absolutely can do that. And so I think, so to that end, maybe what do we need to be asking? One of the things we would ask for is a needs assessment from them. Like just what Dana said, let's make it as simple as possible. Let's not complicate it. Like, what is it that you need? And then that really begins to help us to develop that turnkey model that will really help us and help them in the long run.
Yes, on the Hartford and Cecil conversation, Mary Beth Stapleton, who does community and partnership engagement for Hartford County Public Schools, did say, we have been struggling to just finish this school year to manage graduations and communication with parents and all of those things that many school districts are still thinking about just closing down this year and haven't actually put their eyesight as far forward as they would like. So I think this is the time right now, now that you know, in another week or so, most districts will be done. And they're really going to have to they're going to take a deep breath and go, OMG. now we have this whole other thing we have to do. And if we're there as a support network, and listening, as Dana said, I think that will be a really good.
Absolute key. Yep. Will be important. It will be important for our long-term success. And I think it actually elevates the partnership in a different way going forward. And so that's very strategic, really. You know, I think the key, one of the things that Dana said is not so much, we may have to make some adjustments in our own way of doing things, our own programming and all of that kind of stuff. But I just think that what a shift this could be as we move forward, when schools start seeing us as an essential, it's kind of like we become an essential resource to the school again, versus just a value add. And I don't mean just, because sounds terrible, but value add is great, but it's not mandatory. But we could put ourselves in a position where we become essential. So great top discussion, Dana. Thank you for that. Anything else that you are thinking about that, you know, in terms of who else we should be asking or action steps? You know, I think that one of the things I wanted to throw out, and that's, I know generally nonprofits aren't political, but I do think that we should be consistently in contact with our legislators and our senators to keep in the forefront the importance of youth development. And I mean, we hear a lot about the schools, but we also have to make sure that they understand from a funding perspective. They're making a lot of decisions about money and how money will be spent in the state. And we need to make sure that we stay, I think we stay in front of them. And so that's a group of people who, you know, there's all kinds of little pockets of money stuck away in different places of the state. Maybe the state might need to shift some of those dollars to support some of the initiatives around youth development. So I just throw that out there.
Yeah, I think when we finalize our statement, we are going to share it writ large. Governor, MSDE, legislature, all of those. But we know, you know, the legislature, it's really important that constituents are the people who are reaching
Absolutely.
out. Also, I would say really watch now at the state level what's happening with the CARES Act funding. So there's funding that went to MSDE. That funding is now going down to districts. And then there's a whole pot of funds that the governor has discretion on. And the question is, what will these dollars be spent on, and where will the priorities be? And again, if we're not asking or saying what we need, then we're definitely not going to be in line to be part of those resources. I do think, and I've seen several articles now that I can share some of them. There is this growing awareness that we have a child care crisis, that without school age programs and without after school and summer opportunities, reopening the economy is just not entirely possible. And so I think, you know, connecting into that, to that messaging, saying that you can't do it without us, I think is really, really important. I would love to hear, you know, just if we could just maybe go around and do some reflections of things that, you know, came out of this discussion for you, or things that you'd like to know more about, or things that you think, you know, that most network and our partners could be working on. So I'm just gonna go around and call folks, and just if you can just say a few words about kind of what you've heard, or something you're taking away, something you'd like to see done, that would be great. So I'm going to start with Leslie.
All right, that's, I'm not sure what I've taken away. I think our situation is a little different than the non-school-based programs. This talk about trying to use other spaces then gets into whole transportation issues and things like that. So I think we're in a little bit of a different situation, but I agree that we all need to go in together as a one group saying, this is what we can do for you. This is what, we're able to manage. This is what we need from you, so that we can try to help as many families as we can while staying viable. We don't get any government funds. So for us to have a program that only allows 10 kids in a cafeteria, that's not a feasible scenario for the school-based programs. So I think we have a lot of work yet to do, and we have a lot of unknowns that we need to know before we can really, figure out what we're doing here.
Yeah, I think that viability question is really important, Leslie. I think that the idea that programs should just adapt and that they can function serving less kids in the same way is ridiculous. And there has to be some sort of understanding that there has to be some sort of subsidy there in order to allow for programs to survive when we're talking about these adaptations. And I know I just think that that's really that people have to, that the people who are making decisions about schools opening and businesses opening and saying, oh, well, there'll be childcare. That's just not going to be the case if we can't keep organizations like yours healthy.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Dana, I know you were on you had to get going somewhere, so I'm going to go to you next.
Okay, great. Yeah, this has been amazing. I think probably the biggest takeaway is just, for me, is just always gleaning from what everybody else is doing and, getting ideas and having this space to, collaborate and figure it out. I think we're all in a space of just figuring it out and no one, having all of the answers. So it's always great to hear what other, models are working and have been effective and successful. And again, just gleaning from that for us to know sort of what, things again that we may have to shift. So I just love, the idea of just planning for all of the options, and even when we think we have it, then someone will say, well, no, that's not going to work. And so I think just sort of constantly being at the table and thinking about all of the different options and just the best ways that we can serve, that's what we're all about, is service, and just the best ways that we can serve our students and their families and just continue to make impact. So I'm really just grateful for everyone's feedback and just, sharing, because I think that's, and even in this world that we have been in, sharing has become different, and just the interpersonal. So while I wish we could all be around a table, this virtual table of sharing has been really great. So thank you.
Thanks, Dana. Amber.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Sorry, I was trying to get off mute there. So, I joined the Baltimore City one yesterday. I am joining this one today, and we'll be on a few more. But, my role as regional director for Heart of America Foundation, we don't necessarily have programming with students, but we engage volunteers in schools, and which engages, with students when they are there. And, the one thing that I've enjoyed as part of these is just hearing what everyone's doing, and, the partnerships and the collaboration opportunities. I think, is it Chandra White that spoke earlier? If someone is looking, for maybe bulk ordering, feel free to reach out to me. We do a lot of that. Been doing a lot of resource packs for students across the country, and I've been doing a lot of, that ordering side of things. So feel free to reach out at any time, but just engaging and networking and, seeing, I think it is the unknown right now, and everyone is asking the same questions. So just continuing these conversations, I think, is so important to be able to share, where are the roadblocks, and then how can we help each other through it to impact, our students and our communities.
Thanks, Amber. Will you drop your information into the chat box there?
Absolutely.
Vernell.
I think a large takeaway is just really being able to connect, because sometimes I feel like, we're teleworking and we're in this remote digital kind of world. I feel like sometimes you feel like you're kind of siloed. So just to have time to connect with other people who are doing similar work has value. So I appreciate inviting us.
Thanks. Kristen.
Yeah, I appreciate the ability to connect with everyone. I guess from my experience in working in the city school system and then now in the county, I know the Y has been doing a lot of work with the county trying to get a foot in the door. So I guess my biggest takeaway is to potentially seeing how all of us can work together to make sure that we are, as Violet and everybody else has said, is that we are essential in the school buildings and for the programming. So kind of coming to the county as a resource of saying, hey, we're here, we want to help, and you should be not necessarily doing this all alone. We're able to assist you, so.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen.
Vanessa.
Just thank you for allowing me the opportunity to join you today. And again, not as someone who's a direct service provider, but someone who certainly spent a lot of years in that field, just really value and appreciate what everybody's doing and the opportunity to listen, and having been in a number of conversations across the state, just to know that there's a lot of people having the same concerns, and that there really does need to be an opportunity for this group's voice to be heard at that state level, and just so happy to see most providing that channel for folks. So thank you for the opportunity to listen.
Thanks. Chanira.
I think for me, it was just having the questions be asked and brought to the forefront of things that, we could be considering and thinking about, especially with our programming. You try to think of as many things you can, like you said, plan A, B, C, and D. So just having other questions and listening to other people speak about things that they thought of or ideas to possibly manage the different obstacles that, we're going to be facing was really helpful for me today.
Thanks. Michelle?
Fantastic, thank you.
Similar to what some of the other comments have been, I love the idea of being an essential resource to the school, but I keep coming back to, if we are not allowed to be in the schools, I don't know. I don't know how we can do that. And I'm all about having plan A through Z at the ready. What worries me is, one of the things that worries me is things are changing so quickly that, we don't want to hear on a Friday that, we're able to be open at this capacity on Monday. Just being kept in the loop the whole time the, decision process is going on, and hopefully it will be made timely, and we'll know what's happening for the fall.
Great. And I think that leads me to Shonda.
My biggest takeaway, as others have echoed, is being able to talk with other providers and gain knowledgeable information. And just sometimes being in this virtual world right now is feeling like you're by yourself. I'm a people person, like being at the table with everyone in person, and this has helped a lot as far as the information gained, and I'm having this opportunity to speak with others and to network. So I thank you.
Thank you, Shonda. Suzanne.
Hi. So I'm in a unique position because I'm not in education directly. I am a juvenile counselor with the Joins program for Baltimore County Police. And I don't know if anyone's familiar, but that's a juvenile first-time offender program. It's a restorative justice program. So through that, we do get to do some prevention work in the schools, which I'm assuming is probably going to be on hold for the fall. But the biggest takeaway I have from all of this is when I began working from home for the first time ever in my career, I decided I was going to look for all the learning opportunities, and I have now been made aware of so many great resources like MOST and the No More Stolen Childhoods, all things that I was unfamiliar with that I've had the opportunity to network with some great people and avail myself of some great training opportunities, and really, really have learned a lot. So for that, I'm very grateful.
That's great.
Excellent.
I am putting a link also for those of you who are doing summer programming this summer and are looking for good activities that can be adapted virtually. My colleagues across the country, so I'm one of 50 statewide after-school networks, have collaborated to develop 150 age-leveled activities that can be done either in person or virtual. We're releasing a band of them every 2 weeks. They are also being translated into Spanish. So I've dropped that link into the box. And there's another activity related resource that we've been working with. It's called Mizzen. It is an app, and I will also drop the link to that. It has, again, all sorts of activities that can be downloaded, used both virtually and in person from like National Geographic and Jazz at Lincoln Center and some other really cool stuff. So we hope those are helpful to those of you who are trying to design virtual programming and are looking for some new and high quality things to access.
And I'd like to just add to that, if you go to the girlscouts.org, there's a site called Girl Scouts at Home, and there's a lot of virtual programming that our national organization has done that's there. We have some on our site, Girl Scouts, it's just gscm.org. There's some virtual programs there. There'll be, right now there's probably like 80 programs, but it's going to probably be less, but there'll still be virtual programs that will be that will remain. There is a lot of resources out there. I think for me, the takeaway has been, I think this has already been echoed, but the connection, the reality is that we don't get always the same level of connection working virtually. So I have really loved the opportunity of hearing what people are doing on the ground and virtually for the summer. I loved hearing, not that it was a good thing to hear, but I think the resources that Vanessa brought to the table, because sometimes these are the things that we aren't thinking about. We're just going full head of steam with the virtual programming, but there's these other issues that we have to consider. So for me, that was a huge takeaway in terms of the resources that are there, that are free. That was amazing. So, I think as we continue to navigate, there's quite a few more visioning sessions that we will be doing, and we will be compiling this. Stay connected, and Ellie's going to go over some next steps, but the site that she talked about where there's information dropped in, making comments. I think that is so critical to our to our industry of youth development. We have got to make our voice heard. And the only way to do that is to be commenting when comments are made, and not take everything as this is the way it's going to be, because it says to me, what I'm seeing, even with these recovery plans, is that, you know, what you have today is not going to be necessarily what you have tomorrow. So that we can impact change if we need to. So I'd like to thank everyone who's been on here today and just been part of this. You know, keep the faith. You know, we're all doing really good work and doing the best that we can do.
We will have very soon, I will send out, as I mentioned, a follow-up email that will have links to the PowerPoint, to the chat box, to the slide deck, and to the recording. We are doing little summaries of each event. Those will be posted as well. Then we're going to have a statewide event and summarize everything. But in the meantime, we need your help to craft this statement in the Google Doc that I dropped the link to in the chat box. And we want you to stay connected, continue to send feedback and resources, continue to share with us whatever comments you're making on the recovery plans, or if you've learned about your local district's stakeholder group. Love to hear about that. We will also, you know, just really just welcome you reaching out to us. Our contact information is here. And I think we did miss one person. I think, Maxine, did you have an opportunity to reflect?
Okay, here I am. It was interesting to hear about the many programs that are being offered. I'm just still very worried about where we are. It's a big issue for us.
Absolutely, Maxine.
But the word that I heard a lot was partners. And I think that Michelle, Leslie, and I are going to have a little conference after and see how we can incorporate that into what we do and say.
Awesome, Maxine. Thank you. That's a great way to end.
Thank you, Ellie.
Can I just say, Ellie, that my email, that's our website. My email is vapple@gscm.org.
I'm putting it in the chat box.
All right. Thank you.
Andy, anything for the good of the order, or are we good to go?
Looks like we're all good to go.
Thank
as long
you
as we
very
can
much.
Get this out.
All right. All right. Well, you all, you get 15 minutes back to take I recommend go take a walk, a stretch, a deep breath, something before whatever your next thing is. We look forward to seeing you in more conversations and hearing back from you as we go forward. Thanks so much.
Excellent.
Thank you, Violet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Ellie, let's stay in contact.
Absolutely.
Let me know what else I can do to elevate this voice of youth development. So call on me if you need me.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that we've had these visioning sessions have been a really great opportunity to connect with new people, but people who have always been in our sphere, but we haven't really talked. It's great. So fantastic. I really appreciate it.
I think I'm going to try and attend the one for Howard and Anne Arundel because that's an area that we cover as well. I think this is building up this sector, and what we do and having a voice is so critical. And that's what you do. And if I can be a support and a help to drive that, absolutely, I'm there.
Thank you.
All righty. Thank you so much.
Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.